Actually, we'll put this up here too. Why not? So it's consistent. We're gonna watch the other half of this vampire corpses video because this is fascinating. We're even gonna go back a little. Ooh, we're gonna go back a little bit too because I don't want to.
And also to get to the bottom of what
have ruined it. You know?
Idea that vampires were real, and also to get to the bottom of what exactly was going on. One of the big concerns would have been.
I fucked up and didn't turn on my headset. Anyways, we're gonna watch the rest of this video, and then we're gonna play something new because I just don't want to play the things we have. And tomorrow I'm playing Pokemon since we've been opening Pokemon packs on Friday. So I'm gonna play Pokemon tomorrow. But I think all we have left to do is go through the gyms doing their second thing, so I haven't messed around with it to finish that off. But once we finish that up, it's basically just, you know, looking for shiny Pokemon, finishing up the Pokedex. Nothing big. Maybe do some duels here and there with people if people want to do duels. But the DLC is coming out soon for that, I believe, right? Because it's today's the 31st, so it's coming out in like 2 weeks. It's not a big deal, right? So I'll probably just spend time off stream after tomorrow messing with Pokemon to try and finish up the Pokedex before the DLC comes out, and then we can roll right into that when it's launched, and maybe we'll pull it up and look for duels here and there. Maybe that'll be good. Anyways, we're gonna watch the vampire corpses, and then we're gonna play something new because that's kind of the plan for today, is just finishing this up, and then we're gonna play a new game.
Right after birth must also become vampires.
Lookinger's main mission would have been to quash any idea that vampires were real, and also to get to the bottom of what exactly was going on. One of the big concerns would have been, for the authorities, was there an epidemic of some sort?
So that would make sense, but it's strange.
But as the coffins were opened one by one, Flockinger's observations became more disturbing.
Oh, I knew we were going to get one of these soon. God forbid.
If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Let me call
Not
Jeremy.
Stella Artois, I'll tell you that.
Jeremy, what up, man?
What he would have noted when he went inside the body was only 4 of them were decomposing naturally, or what he assumed was natural.
The new nails are evident, along with fresh and vivid skin.
All of these things didn't seem to be consistent with how he thought bodies should be decomposing.
Upon the opening of the body, there was revealed a quantity of fresh extravascular blood.
What the doctors were seeing contradicted their medical training.
Not, as is usual, filled with coagulated blood.
Modern medicine would recognize that these symptoms of vampirism were simply the normal process of decomposition.
Milo, 25 years old.
Bodies can seem to be plump and healthy because of gases swelling up in the dead tissue.
By the name of Militza.
It's true.
Blood stains around the mouth are the result of stomach.
The thing with like that plumping because of gases in the body, because like I've seen this with dead cows out in pastures, like family owned out in Kansas, right? Is like it might look that way because it's bloated. If it goes further, it's obviously wrong because it looks like a bloated balloon. At both stages, because the decomposition is making it look normal, like that bloatedness is making the body look as plump as usual rather than like it's decomposing. If you were to puncture that skin or cut it open to pull out organs the way they are, that gas releases and it smells like death. You smell death when you do that at both stages. So I don't know how that would be the case, and they don't take note of the smell of death still being there, right?
Fluids leaking out.
She also was in a state of vampirism.
None of these bodies had been buried for more than 3 months, and that means that the first body would have been buried in September, allowing for a cold autumn, it's easy to imagine
That would
the
make
body
sense.
would have stayed relatively well preserved.
Yeah, it's more frozen. If it's actually cold.
Fluckinger's report into the vampire corpses was sent back to Belgrade.
I'm saying actually cold, but like I'm talking about ground temperature, like in the ground at the depth that the body is, which modern it's 6 feet, right? Obviously back then probably not so much, but if your body is surrounded by soil that's not reaching the cold temperatures that it is at the surface, if it's like 30 degrees outside Fahrenheit, and you've got that going on, what level or what temperature is it down where the body is at? Is it still 50 degrees because recently it's been 80, 90 degrees? So down there it was 55 degrees or so, and it hasn't, like, that cold hasn't seeped down that far yet. Like you have to account for ground temperature for that to really work.
And was seized
But I have no idea. Like, and even the way she said it, it's assumative that like maybe they just had a cold August, right? Like a cold fall. Like, it's not that, or cold autumn. I think I said August. I meant autumn, fall. But the thing is, even with how she said it, it's assumptive. Like they didn't look up reports of how things were back then, or if anybody cared to write it down. So, but a lot of the time we're able to figure that stuff out. But if nobody wrote it down, then it's all assumptive. We don't know.
Fluckinger's report into the vampire corpses was sent back to Belgrade and was seized on by the newspapers. The story exploded across Europe, fascinating thousands of readers and causing terror in many more.
It makes sense. They're all Catholic,
This
walking past a
report
Catholic
got
church.
picked up by other sources.
Standard.
In particular by newspapers.
I don't know why they showed everybody doing the cross thing. That's just, if you're Catholic and you go past a church, you do it. Like not a church, but if you're Catholic and you go past the Catholic church, you typically do that. I don't know why they just showed everybody doing something normal to be like, oh, here's this, look at the people. Like, it's not because they walked past a corpse and they were scared. It's because they walked past the church and they're doing their Catholic little cultural thing to be doing.
This report got picked up by other sources, in particular by newspapers, which were read by other people in Europe, the intelligentsia of Europe, and it kind of spread, not just in Serbia, not just in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but eventually all through Western Europe.
Okay. That makes sense.
Serbian reports of vampire, although they were localized, generated an extremely high level of fear. I think
it would be. It'd be terrifying.
Best to modern rumor panics, where you get a kind of anomalous event, which is then linked on to kind of fears which are already in the population.
That makes
but
sense.
It's very, very intense, very, very real, and this is really what happened in Serbia.
And you also have to keep in mind that this happened and took place in a period of time for the earlier cases where you had candles and a fireplace, like a fireplace to keep you warm in the night and a candle to see in the dark because we didn't have electricity. Some of them within the last 23 years. Not quite the case technologically at that point, but it is important to remember that these come from a period in time where that was the case, just culturally, like industrially, scientifically, that's where we were as people.
In villages across
not
Central
just there,
Europe,
but people around the globe. We weren't
began.
that sophisticated.
Graves of the recently deceased were opened.
New Advil Dual Action Back Pain.
I really need to figure out which one works for this, because mine does not, and it's disappointing having to deal with these stupid ass ads. I hate these.
Dual Action Back Pain.
The ones that people do on their channel, like as a promotion that they're legitimately paid to do, right on. But this shit, why? Fuck you. ESPN Plus gets plenty of money. Shut up.
And the corpses were beheaded and often burnt. Were the same scenes played out in medieval Ireland? when the deviant burials were placed in their graves? Were these bodies feared as vampires? The terrifying tales from Eastern Europe inspired a series of best-selling novels that would take the vampire myth to the next level.
The vampire comes into European folklore and literature at the beginning of the 19th century. Just very at the beginning. And again, it's through these translations of these descriptions of the 18th century. And the first time we really see it is Dr. Polidori, who is writing along with Byron and Mary Shelley at this wonderful sort of summer camp in Switzerland. And he takes this notion of the vampire and kind of turns it into the Byronic hero. He was actually thinking of Lord Byron. So this is the first major change. What had been really scary, foul vampires become really attractive, dangerous aristocrats.
In 1898, Bram Stoker transformed the idea of the dangerous dead into the sophisticated predatory vampire at the heart of so much film and
Nosferatu and all that stuff, right? You get Bram Stoker's Dracula, and then we end up with Nosferatu, and
Dracula
so forth,
was
so
set
on.
partly in the Gothic ruins of Whitby Abbey, which Stoker explored during his holidays on the Yorkshire coast.
Tell me that doesn't look like a cool place to just hang out and be like, you know what, we're gonna talk about some Dracula shit. Dracula has this castle, and Dracula's gonna, or Nosferatu, or whatever vampire name you want to come up with. You want to use Stupid Edward, or you want to go like Nosferatu, or whatever. I don't care. You call him Michael. I really don't mind. But just this castle right here, you could even just get rid of all this modern shit. But this castle, you could keep this here because that looks old-timey too. But this looks older than everything around. And it's just managed to stand the test of time and not get toppled, not get destroyed by sieging and everything. And then, like, the fact it's got these two bridges to take you to these to reach this tower here in the middle as well, to be able to do that, like, it just makes for a good story. Like, this would be a great castle to use for, like, Frankenstein, the monster of Frankenstein, right? Like, that would make sense. It makes sense for, like, the Beauty and the Beast here. Like, this is a good castle for a lot of stories. This is the kind of castle you picture for a lot of types, like a lot of different stories. At least for me, that's the type of castle that comes to mind. That's cool as fuck because it's real. You know what I mean? I like that type of thing.
He chose Whitby as the landing place for Dracula when the evil count first arrives in England.
Stoker's sources were exactly these 18th century panics. And these had been written up, published, and translated. And by the time Stoker was writing, people were going to Eastern Europe. The tourist industry was well and truly established. And Stoker really knew about this kind of strange edge of Europe.
That's interesting. Like, it's interesting that he just, like, the timing, you know what I mean? Timing is so crucial.
Are still alive in the 21st century. In parts of Central Europe, fear of the undead remains chillingly real. In Marotino de Sus, a small village in southern Romania, relatives take care to seal fresh graves by circling around them with incense.
I'm sure there's some whack job out there that's gonna see a clip of this video, see a portion of it that I take and put on TikTok or Instagram, or that my editor takes and makes into its own thing, or a short or whatever, where they're doing this, and somebody tries to claim that this is a Native American woman burning sage or some shit, because nobody seems to understand that burning sage and burning incense is looked at as doing the exact same and achieving the exact same types of things, because culturally, as human beings, we have a whole hell of a lot of similarities across time, across continents, across oceans. we do similar types of things. We just may use different types of things for it. Like, this definitely wouldn't be cultural appropriation. That's an incense can that's looks like it looks similar to the incense cans that you see the cardinals and the pastors or priests or whatever they call them in the Catholic Church. It looks like what the Catholic Church uses to waft out their incense when they walk down. They've got it on like a stick, and there's a chain, and they swing it. It looks similar to that, right? Like, so at least from the Catholic services and things I've been to, like funerals and weddings and things in Catholic churches, it that's what that reminds me of, is the Catholic incense thing. But doing this around your house, doing this around your area of worship, the altar or whatever it is you worship at, doing this around graves, around places that you worry there are evil spirits, to cleanse them, this transcends just your own culture. So if you're trying to come out with cultural appropriation shit, sit back down. Just sit back down. This is human culture, not your culture alone.
By circling around them with incense. Villagers bring the deceased food to ensure they have everything they need for the journey into the
ear
next
itch,
world.
go away. The fuck is that? That's a better pause. Like, is this a giant Rice Krispie with big M&Ms and a candle in it? And like when you go eat pho, like that style of spoon in here? Is that what this is? That's what this looks like to me.
But sometimes
I've never
the
seen
ritual
whatever that is
precautions
before.
aren't enough. In 2004, 5 men went to the village cemetery to exhume the corpse of a man called Petra Toma, who had died recently. Toma's niece, Mirela Marinescu, claimed he had become a Maroi, a Romanian word for the undead.
Ooh. So she says he's a Maroi, which is Romanian. Romania being, or no, I'm thinking Transylvania. Romania, if I'm not mistaken, is close to Transylvania, right? Let's pull up a map because I'm terrible at geography. Romania globe. Let's pull this up. Ah, damn it. Because that one wasn't going to work out how I wanted it to. I'm going to have to know things I don't know. Ah, boo hiss. Fuck you mean no results. Okay, maybe this will work and we can just zoom out. Romania's here, right? That's where we've got our pin. Moldova, Ukraine, up here. So Romania is not quite where I thought it was. I thought Romania was more up here, I think, in my head, maybe? Istanbul, Turkey, Syria, Serbia, Montenegro. I just don't know where these countries are. Apparently, I'm that bad. Not even apparently, just obviously this is how bad I am at geography. Romania, but what was it I was thinking of earlier? I forgot what we were looking for. Transylvania. Good lord. So Romania's here. Let's look up. Is it inside of Romania? It is in Romania. I didn't know it was in Romania. I thought Transylvania was its own place. So it's right up here. It's this part of Romania. Was it at some point its own nation? It was. Okay. I only know Transylvania existing as a nation from whenever they put everything together. It may have taken place after World War I that they put it together and made all of this Romania, and they may not have done that until after World War II, and it may have happened at any time prior to or in between as well. Like, I have no idea. I just thought Transylvania was its own nation, and Romania, I really thought Romania was like this big, and that a lot of this was like 3 or 4 nations right here. It used to be multiple nations, not anymore. That's how bad I am at geography. I don't know. Which makes this actually even more interesting, because technically Romania is Transylvania now, right? Transylvania is part of Romania, so technically it's the same thing now. It's not a different place. Back to my original point, she's Romanian. That's where Transylvania is.
A Romanian word for the undead.
But that's Vlad, right? I don't remember where Vlad the Impaler was.
Morella believed that the Moroi would kill her, so her husband
Wouldn't
asked
anybody-
farmer Ion Ionescu to help him in destroying the creature.
Wouldn't anybody who thought they were being like followed by an undead think they were going to die? Jesus. This is a lot.
Dar puternic, nu așa. Deci când am cu târnăcopul să lească întâi din târnăcop în gheața aia. Când am de-a spart gheața la cimitir.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Da, în rest, sângele era proaspăt. Chedea și așa de la încheietura gurii până la ureche.
Blood fresh from the mouth
It's
to the
chillingly
ear?
similar to the story of
Like
the
this?
Stephenhill vampires
See,
in
that's
England,
weird.
recorded almost 1,000 years ago.
I want someone to explain that. How do you have just like blood from the mouth to the ears? Specifically from the mouth to the ears, because you'd think if there was blood escaping the body through orifices, it wouldn't just come through your mouth, it'd come through your nose as well, right? And your ears simultaneously. The ears, nose, throat. They're all ears, nose, throat. That's all connected. Right? So wouldn't you expect at least blood to be coming from your mouth and your nose together? Probably your ears as well. Like, wouldn't that make more sense? It's strange that it's just the mouth. I don't know why it would do that. It's like, I'm not a doctor, but it seems odd to me, a layman, like everybody else, really.
Mi-a băgat cuțitul și l-a despintecat de aici, așa, de la, scuzați-mă, nu știu cum să mă exprim, până aici, așa.
So probably from the pelvis to the sternum, I assume.
Zicem vecinul meu, dacă a sărit din...
The Whirlpool Smart Range automatically updates itself with features like
Holy
AirPlug.
shit.
So you
Hold on.
The
The dead man growled twice. So we understand there have been cases where it's been seen where when a dead body is, when it's decomposing or when it's disturbed, you still get a signal sometimes through the nervous system that causes motion. So that the motion with the grunt, that makes sense. The thing is if you get a motion that's doing that motion he's doing, that's also compressing like the muscles around your rib cage that force you to breathe. You know what I mean? Like it's messing with all those, so it might force air that's still in the lungs through your vocal box and out of your nose or mouth, causing you to grunt like that. If his body was moving too, it may just be that. Now, if you don't know that takes place, if you don't know that that's a fairly common thing to see, that would be fucking terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Now, if you hunt enough animals and clean enough animals, because you're hunting them to eat them, so you have to skin them and gut them and clean them, you're going to see animals do this when you know it's nothing but a corpse. You'll see something like with a chicken, it's obviously just a corpse, or like any bird really. It's been dead for maybe you shot it at the beginning of walking a field and it took you 45 minutes to walk that field. And so you're back at your car or your trucks, whatever you're hunting from, and you pull out this bird. It doesn't move when you grab it. It's still dead. When you grab it off the ground, maybe, or the bird dog grabs it off the ground, the bird dogs, sometimes some of the bird dogs I've hunted with and my family is trained, they'll whip the bird for you. Like, they'll grab it by the head and they'll whip the bird with their head and their neck motion, snapping the bird's neck. So when it comes to you, the head just dangles and you know, like, okay, it's got a broken neck. This bird's definitely dead. And other times you would just do it yourself, just save yourself the problem. If you've just stunned the bird and it's playing dead, we made sure, right? But there were times where you'd have it, you know that it's gone, you know it's no longer alive, and you're cleaning the bird, you're plucking feathers from the bird. Maybe you've cleaned the bird, but you're parting it out. So you're parting like the wings and the legs from the rest of it because you're going to cook those separate or whatever, or you just plan to freeze them separately, whatever it is. And you start seeing them move and do things, and it's just what happens. And sometimes it happens after you gut it, right? So you could have it skinned and you could have it gutted, but you can still get a signal through the nervous system when you start cutting through like a joint. You hit a nerve and you cause it to do this with a wing or an arm or a leg or something. It's just something that happens. And if you mess around with enough things that are dead, you're going to see it take place frequently enough that you're like, okay, this thing happens. But if you don't, and then you also get a noise and it's a human being, that would be terrifying.
Zicem vecinul meu, dacă a sărit din groapă, de nu mai fi de aici cu pușca pe cimitir de frică.
Well, that would make sense. Like I said, if you're not used to it, that'd be absolutely terrifying.
The villagers were going to destroy the Moroi,
mortifying,
cutting out the dead man's heart. On the first night, they couldn't find it, so they went back a second time. This time, they succeeded. They collected straw.
How the fuck did they not find it?
Husks to make a fire.
Și așa zicea că se arde la răscruci. Am pus cocinea sus, pai, le-am dat foc și inima s-a luat în furcă, că așa se lua în furcă, cea că să nu pui mâna pe ea. Am luat-o în furcă și când am pus-o...
It's not good to touch the heart, so we put it on a fork. And he shows the pitchfork, right? Like, okay, get it. But how'd you get it on the fucking pitchfork? You didn't pitchfork it out of the corpse, I'll tell you that.
Acolo, domne, și i-a făcut focul ăla, flacăra aia, și cum părăia.
Petra Toma's daughter complained about the desecration of her father's body. The story went global.
Even for Romanians,
makes sense,
who are born in towns who don't know these practices, when the whole story pumped out in the media, it was a very, very bad feeling that it was a scandal.
Well,
Look here how primitive we can be. How come? So what will say the strangers, Europeans, when hearing this kind of primitive practices?
They'll say that this is what you got to do to save yourself from a vampire.
To investigate the desecration.
This is Romania. This is the land of Transylvania. Okay? All right? This isn't the U.S. This isn't Japan. This is the land of Transylvania. This is Romania, where Transylvania is at. They're going to tell you this is what you do to stop vampires. Now, who are you going to listen to? The people who come from a place where you don't worry about vampires, or the people who come from the place where vampires were a problem in their lore and their mythology? Like all their heritage tells them these vampires are a fucking issue here, okay? They're an issue. Are you going to have some issues to take? Sure. You know who I'm going to listen to? I'm going to listen to the experts on the vampires. I'm not a vampire expert. I don't have to deal with them. I never had to deal with a vampire in my life. Somebody from Transylvania might have to. These Romanians may just have something they know that we don't. Best brace yourself.
Of Petra Toma's corpse. But in most cases, these strange rituals are not reported to the authorities or anyone else.
In such remote and isolated villages like Marotima is, with people very old living in the community, such rituals are very well preserved, and they are carried out in order to let's say, protect somehow the community from such events like returning from dead can be. So you can still find it in remote rural communities, not only in Romania, but in the whole Balkan area, for example, in Serbia or in Bulgaria. Where it's something that people
so it's all the
do.
Balkan areas, huh? All the Balkan states do it?
The beliefs in 21st century Romania.
Well, the Balkan area probably doing that comes from the period of time when, like, Transylvania was its own nation. When Romania was, like, 6 countries, right? Like we looked at earlier, where it was, like, 5 or 6 different countries in that area, is the space that is now Romania. So, like, it makes sense, is what I'm saying. Like, it's regional lore. It's something that was worried about regionally because of things that were experienced regionally, and so it's transpired and spoken about regionally. It's not just going to be Romania or Transylvania. It's a regional thing.
Seem identical.
That's why they're
to
the vampire experts and not
England,
us.
Almost 1,000 years ago.
It is quite amazing the level of continuity that we can see in these beliefs in Europe across a very broad time span. And I think it shows that, people feel not everything can be explained rationally. There is still space, even in modern society, for fear and superstition.
This deep-seated terror of the undead has lasted at least 1,000 years, from the Middle Ages to the present day. But could its roots in Ireland be even older? The archaeologists investigating the deviant burials found at Kilteashen are waiting for the results of carbon-14 dates, which will tell them when these individuals died. Chris Reed is on his way to the lab to get the results.
It's one of the treats for us archaeologists to actually get a date back. Because I suppose more than any other sort of bit of analysis, it allows us to do what we're supposed to do, which is put the site in some kind of chronological order.
Okay, well that would make sense,
My
right?
own feelings is that it's early rather than later medieval, somewhere in the 8th, 9th century. That would be...
That's fair.
That would be what I would be thinking, and I like being right, so I hope that's what it is.
He doesn't want to be wrong,
It would be remarkable if Chris can trace this fear of the vampire dead back several centuries before the earliest medieval accounts. Two weeks after the samples were taken from the deviant burials, the carbon-14 dates are now in.
The results were actually emailed to me last night from the company in Miami, and it's just gonna have a look here. Right, okay. It looks like both of the burials date to anywhere from the late 7th century to the 9th century.
So from the 600s to the 800s. Right, from the late 6th or the late 7th century, he said, so that would be 600 something, to the late 8th century would be 700 something. Right? Or am I mishearing?
It looks like both of the burials date to anywhere from the late 7th century to the 9th century.
Yeah, so he's saying anywhere from the late 600s AD to the late 800s AD. That's a fair amount of time, right? That's like 300 years-ish. I don't see what he's seeing, apparently, but... Okay. I think I'm seeing 880. 780 would be... 780 AD would be 8th century. 880 would be exactly 100 years later in the 9th century. 720 is still 7, right? So that's still 8 8th century. 890 is a little bit further this direction, but it's still... What they're showing us doesn't show us this 6th century that he's talking about.
And both of the dates seem to overlap in the middle of the
7th century, I'm sorry.
So anywhere from about 720 to 750, 760.
I think he did the centuries wrong. Because he's even saying anywhere from 7 something. That's not the 7th century. That's the 8th century. Up to like the 1200s. That's the 13th century. So you've got a good like 600 years.
So the Irish skeletons with the stones in their mouths were buried at least 300 years before the stories of the undead in England.
Oh, they were comparing the two. I see.
Remarkably, there are records from the same period suggesting that the fear of revenants and vampires was common.
One of the fascinating things about the dating of those burials is that they fit very well with the Irish penitential texts that were written in that period. So we've got one of these penitential texts from probably the 7th or 8th centuries. It's called the First Synod of St. Patrick. And one of the things it describes in there is about the fear of the living dead. So it says that anybody who believes in vampires should be put outside the church. What that actually shows was that there was a lot of people who believed in something like vampires in Ireland.
If you believe in vampires, you should be put outside the church.
You've got archaeology
For
matching
what?
up very well with our historical sources.
Like, that's just weird to say from a religious perspective. If you believe in vampires, to be outside the church, right? Like, that's a strange thing to say religiously from, like, a Christian perspective of religion and theology. Because the existence of things like vampires would be demonic, according to that faith. So it doesn't make sense to be like, yeah, I think there's some vampires, to be like, you stay out of the church, and be like, oh shit, where are they at? Maybe we should do something about that because that's demonic. Right? Like, especially in Ireland, where there was a big Catholic push, but I don't understand the whole conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics in Ireland. I don't know that portion of history, especially like Irish history. So maybe it was that they were Protestant and they didn't like the Catholic push, and that's why, is because they were Protestant, not Catholic, or vice versa. Is what is in my head, is that they were Catholic and the Protestant push happened, and I could be wrong. I just don't know what it is. My thing is that just doesn't make sense, because my understanding is the Catholic view for the Irish, and that seems like something you would just be like, it's demonic, we need to attack it religiously. Not, you don't come in here.
But why would this fear have been so powerful in this period?
Or I'm misunderstanding what they said about
believes that the
staying out of the church or whatever
Christianity may have triggered a wave of phobia.
Anthropologists have shown that when old established belief systems get disrupted by the appearance of monotheism, by Christianity or Islam or Buddhism, that very often they can take curious forms. Now, an obvious possible context for that would be 7th century England, with the conversion of the kings and then the kingdoms to Christianity between about 600 and about 660. And it is very interesting that a lot of the deviant burials come from that period. And so it may be that a heightened sense of fear at certain categories of people who may be seen to be a threat after their deaths is something that comes when Christianity undercuts the old beliefs and people are unsure what they should believe in.
Those fears seem to have
we all know what that's about.
The Celtician skeletons.
This is insanity, though.
Brutality.
Look at that. Just look at how they digitally put this body in this soil through CGI, just to try to mimic how it had to be sitting in the soil to make it make sense, the way that they uncovered this. And they dug it up. There's no way that this is just from shifting. It's way too much. And the way it's wrapped around the stone with the legs and where that stone's at, there's no way that just happened and took place. Not with the stones that just happened to be in the mouths of other ones and stuff like that. ankles that are bound, and like this isn't normal.
In the same way,
those are
in modern Romania,
terribly treated
cutting
corpses.
the heart out from a dead relative might seem to be a barbaric act.
I think it's far less barbaric than what happened in Ireland.
There is another way of
shit.
understanding these rituals. In Romania, they are seen as helping the Moroi.
Well, yeah, they're setting them free. They're freeing them from their demonic possession of their corpse.
They are doing him
essentially, right?
Something good, not something bad. So it's about universal cosmic harmony. So the dead with the dead, the alive with the alive. So for the community it's very good. For the dead it's very good. So where is the harm for them?
Slaying a Moroi stops him from being trapped between this
Why did they do a
world
close-up
and the
on a
next.
plastic flower?
It literally saves him from a fate worse than death.
The main difference between the Moroi and the vampire is that the vampire would kill to be sure that he would live ever after. Let's say the Strigoi or the Moroi in the Romanian tradition.
The Strigoi as well? What? If you watch, it's interesting that we hear him say Strigoi to me because of, if you watch The Strain, which is an old series, I don't remember when it came out, but The Strain's not new. But you can find it on, I think, Amazon or Hulu, something, one of the streaming services. I don't know where it's at exactly off the top of my head. It's something I paid for because I just enjoy the series. But it's about vampires of a different variety than how you normally would physically see them. And without spoiling the show, they refer to the vampires as Strigoi. And I've never looked up where that comes from, so this is the only time I've ever heard the word Strigoi outside of that show. But like I've said a billion times, horror isn't my genre of thing. So this could be used in like Nosferatu or some form of Dracula or whatever, and I just never watched that one or don't remember hearing them say Strigoi. Entirely possible, but it just stands out. That's a great show, by the way. The Strain is fantastic.
Do nothing else but signal that something is wrong with him, and he need assistance from the community to properly integrate it into the other world.
Dacă să fiți siguri, Doamne ferește și Doamne păzește, dacă aveți părinți ăștia bătrâni, mai bine îi băgați omul în acolo așa la inimă.
Yeah, pierce the heart, stake the heart. Yeah.
It's extraordinary how this modern folklore...
They just believe... So over here, they just believe that this is just what happens when you die, that your body will be controlled from the afterlife or from some other shit, and you just become the living dead. You become a Strigoi, you become a vampire, a zombie, whatever you're going to call it. That is an intense fear to have, just culturally, that when you die, you're going to be something that haunts your living loved ones, their descendants, the people from your town, your village, your community, and you're going to be like a danger to all of them after you die. That's an insanely crazy, like, it's not that it's crazy to think that that's going to happen, it's that it's such a wild cultural thing to just be like, yeah, you got to pierce your family members' hearts when they die with a sewing needle to keep them from coming back from the dead. Like, that is fascinating. Because if you have to live with that kind of a fear over what happens when you die, holy crap, man. The worst thing to imagine would be like you die and then you kill your own children, right? Like, what the hell? What a fear.
Could be the key to understanding a deep-rooted
what a fear to have
that can never be explained by archaeology and science alone.
Archaeologists always have been very reluctant to use folklore, folkloric traditions as a way of explaining ideas in the past. They think, well, they may have been reinvented in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. Can we really get into the medieval mind? I think there's often a lot of truth behind these folklore stories.
It's fair.
I'm sure that as more examples are published, archaeologists will become sensitized that actually when they find stones in burials, or they find nails in aberrant places and so forth, they will begin to say, maybe that's a revenant burial, and publish it. And so hopefully as awareness increases, so we'll begin to recognize that actually it wasn't a very rare thing, but actually really quite common in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it sure seems that way, doesn't it? It seems like it was commonplace, because they had that
For
fear.
archaeologist Chris Reed, the deviant burials have enriched his understanding of Ireland's mysterious medieval past.
That's what
The
happens.
stone skeletons, when they were first discovered, none of us really understood the potential importance of them or significance in the wider scheme. But as time has gone on, we've all realized just how special they actually are and how unique within an Irish context.
I mean, I thought it was fairly
Farmer
apparent.
John
It's
Burke
strange.
owned the land at Kilteashan, where the skeletons were found. He believes
It's not
that
how
whatever
people
the
treat the
reasons
dead.
for these strange burials, the bodies should now be returned to their graves and left to rest in peace.
It's a strange thing.
Right, you know what happened
Dad
now. We
also
have an
said
understanding.
this
We
was
put
a
them
very
back.
peaceful place. For me, it's a sacred place, and it will always be a sacred place, with no particular fear or thoughts or otherwise. And in a way, I feel almost, in a way, responsible or a duty bound to respect the people who are buried there. Those people, they weren't brought from anywhere else. They're the local people's ancestors.
Yeah.
And I
Put 'em
respect
back.
that. And I think we're privileged to have this kind of site on our land.
That's the right outlook to have, I'd say. I'd say he has the right outlook on it. Because that's actually just fascinating. What a fascinating thing. Oops. That is an absolutely fascinating little thing right there to be involved in, right? Like, you find these strange bodies and corpses that don't make any sense, these deviant corpses, and then you've got to figure out what the hell, why were they treated this way? Like, that is wild. That is absolutely wild in a very unusual way.